worst versions of them are essentially believers in the religion of atheism.
Right.
They worship the concept of there being no God, and this is it. When you die, nothing happens.
Yeah.
And that to me is always so arrogant. Speculate. You know, to even just say, what do you think happens when you die? Like, even that conversation is like, people don't like that. Nothing. It goes dark, and that's it. It's over. That's it. You die. Like, how the fuck do you know? Have you died? Like, you don't know.
What do you think of Jesus? What do you think of the historical person of Jesus?
Well, it certainly seems like there's a lot of people that believe that there was this very exceptional human being that existed.
In other words, Jesus is saying, you heard it was said, but I say this. It's not making sure you understand. Jesus is not progressive. This video is the second part of the long extension of the podcast with Joe Rogan and Wes Huff. I'm telling you, you guys gotta watch. There's a lot of nuggets, little pieces of information that you cannot miss. But mostly the last 20 minutes for me, and for a lot of actually YouTubers, it's people who are actually teaching the Bible, apologists, you name it. The last 20 minutes was, for a lot of people, very important because Joe Rogan, you know Joe Rogan, he's trying to actually avoid the question about Jesus, and actually Wes comes up with great arguments about the resurrection also. But he at some point, Joe Rogan exposes the heart of the atheist community. I'm not attacking. It was said by Joe Rogan, but that's exactly what is happening. So anyway, let's go straight to the video. Again, stay with me. At the end, I'm going to give my thoughts, but also this is a reaction video, so please don't tell me to stop. If you want to go watch the whole video, just go and watch it. But thank you for staying with me. Let's go straight to the video and just stay at the end.
It really is. And I think it's because of the barrier to entry is so high. There's so much to learn. There's so much to dig. That most people barely scratch the surface of this stuff.
Right.
And it takes someone like you to really kind of, because it's like real easy to lean into the fun stuff. It's real easy to lean into the Anunnaki stuff and other, but the actual real shit that we know is 100% the accounts of people that lived back then.
Yeah.
That to me is as fascinating, if not more, than even we were made by aliens. Like all of it is bizarre. And the fact that we're still going over these texts thousands of years later is also fascinating.
Yeah. And lots of this stuff, like the onomastic congruence, is something that has really only been studied to the level that it has within the last, 50 years.
Wow.
So we're constantly discovering ways that we can use different types of methodological analysis to figure out the historical validity of something. So this is, we call it verisimilitude, which is historians are looking for what can show us the appearance, likelihood, and probability of something being true. And so sometimes documents out themselves as being unreliable and not true because they inadvertently include these clues. Like, so the Gospel of Barnabas, which I mentioned before, which Billy Carson has brought up as an evidence that he sees as denying the crucifixion. It talks about Jesus getting in a boat and traveling to Nazareth. But Nazareth is landlocked. So that person clearly did not know anything about the geography of first century Israel.
Right.
Because you're not getting in a boat to go to Nazareth, right? So, but if you're writing, in the case of the Gospel of Barnabas, you're talking about 1,000+ years later. But if you've never been there and you don't understand, it's like, have you ever seen middle-age paintings of lions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had no idea what they were.
Well, we brought that up the other day because I was in Ravello.
Okay.
And there's a church, an ancient church in Ravello, and it has a depiction of the whale. And the whale doesn't look anything like a whale. It has wings. It looks like a lion's head. It's so weird.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the Middle Ages, throughout the Middle Ages.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
I mean, it looks like a dragon.
Yeah, yeah.
Crazy.
Well, and lions look a lot like dogs because they're like, what's your frame of reference?
Right.
So,
and also you're getting someone describing it to an artist.
Yeah.
You probably can't paint it.
Yeah.
So you have to describe it.
Yeah. It's
yeah, that's what it looks like.
Yeah. Tertiary, secondary. So, and a lot of these writings kind of out themselves as that, literarily, within the things that they choose to include. Names are a small example, but geography or distances between places, the biblical Gospels describe going up to Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. And we can kind of read that and not think anything about it. But Jerusalem, on the elevation of sea level, you do go up to it. And so it's like these small clues that we as historians are looking for. Or on the parable of the Good Samaritan, it's going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. And you go down like an elevation in sea level to go to Jericho. Or the story of Zacchaeus, who's the guy who climbs a tree to see Jesus. He's a wee little man. He's short and he can't see over the crowd. And he hears this miracle worker, Jesus, is coming. So he climbs a sycamore tree. And the Gospels specifically say he climbs a sycamore tree. Well, this can be like a detail we can pass over, but we know based on kind of the acidity of the soils that sycamore trees only grow in those areas in that, time frame. So we can look and see, okay, well, whoever Luke is getting this from, he's adding this detail. Maybe he's not even aware of the significance of it, but whoever he's getting this from has been there because they actually know what tree would have been growing there and tell him that Zacchaeus climbs a sycamore tree. And so it's like fauna and flora and distance between locations, things that actually other ancient writers get wrong sometimes.
Have you ever had a debate with a snarky atheist?
Yeah.
I think that would be
Like
fun.
a formal debate?
No, not even a formal debate. I think it would be a fascinating conversation because I'm sure, atheists, they vary just like...
Check this out. This is actually when he makes a comment about atheists. The atheist community in reality, because let me just make a pause right here. Sorry. But one of the things that you have to be passionate about is not only reading, because we can read novels, we can read read a bunch of stuff, fantasies. We can actually make things in our mind. The problem with that is that when we start digging and make sure that what we are reading is it's true, automatically that everything else, the more you open up the can of worms, if I may say this, is that you're going to start finding more evidence. As we see now, you guys can actually go check this video with Dr. Frank Turek. He went to Egypt, and in Egypt, they opened up, I think it was inside the pyramids, where one sarcophagus was open, but also it had some inscriptions about where the inscription says and mentions the people, the Jewish people, the Hebrews. So the more we know that the Bible is true, the more we have evidence, the more we have all this stuff. At the end, again, what are we going to do with this evidence? What are we going to do with the things that we have in hand? Now, Joe is going to mention something very important, is like, just because you don't have evidence doesn't mean it's not true. Just listen to this conversation.
Christians vary, but the worst versions of them are essentially believers in the religion of atheism.
Right.
They worship the concept of there being no God, and this is it. When you die, nothing happens.
Yeah.
And that to me is always so arrogant. Just the fact that you exist at all is so bizarre and so spectacular. The idea that you know for sure that when the lights shut out, that's a wrap, like, because there's no evidence of the contrary. Well, okay.
Kind of assuming your conclusion there.
Absence of evidence is not evidence. It's especially when you're talking about something that's as bizarre as death. And especially when you have people that have near-death experiences that are radically similar.
Yeah.
Those are really weird. They're really weird how many similarities people have in these near-death experiences from accidents and all sorts of things that people, come back from, where their heart stops beating, they see themselves above their body. There's a lot of weirdness to it that makes you... I just think it's a little silly, because how could you know what you don't know?
Yeah.
You cannot know what you don't know. And the problem is that there's a cachet, that there's a social credit amongst academics in particular that's ascribed to a person who is atheist, a person who he's brilliant, he's not silly, he doesn't believe in myths, he doesn't... I get it. I get why there's social pressure in that regard.
You got to listen to Joe right here, because Joe is literally putting all his thoughts together, trying to explain Jesus Christ. It's very interesting, because everything he knows, everything he learned, everything he has been talking, because like I said, he has a lot of information in his brain right now. Like, he is going to the whole information about what he knows about Jesus Christ, what he knows about the Bible and stuff like that. But it's very interesting, because if you notice, Wes is not saying absolutely nothing right now. He's just letting Joe talk and speak and see what his view of Jesus Christ is, which in this video right here, this part of it, Wes is going to ask him about Jesus Christ.
Get it? But to not look at the universe itself, just this creation engine of planets and stellar nurseries, just the
Right.
bizarreness of the epicness of it all, and to not wonder if maybe you have a very narrow perception
Right.
of what this whole thing is all about.
Yeah. Deny the virgin birth, but not the virgin birth of the universe.
Yeah, well, all of it, like everything, just the big. There's so many more impressive miracles than any of the things that people think of in the Bible. It's just they're so weird in our day and age that we're not willing to, like. If we want to think that things are very clean and easy to measure, and they often are not. And I think most of what it means to be a human being in a meaningful way is not measurable. Most of it. Love and friendship and community, these things are not very measurable. They're very strange. The bond that people have with their family and their loved ones, and it's very strange.
Yeah.
That love connection, whatever love is, whatever.
Again, love, I'm just going to put it in a simple way. To me, love, and what I actually, many people are going to agree with me. If you don't agree with me, that's fine. Put your comments down below. But love is actually in action and free will, because you choose to love someone. My wife chose to love me. I didn't make her love me. My wife chose to love me. I choose to love my wife. And from that product, our daughters came out, because it's part of love. How do you explain love? How do you explain free will? How do you explain your thoughts? If we were like a mechanism, if we're robots, then we are programmed to think the same thing, do the same thing, agree in every single thing. Think about it.
Whatever good is, it's a very real thing, and it seems to not exist, certainly not in the volume in other animals that exist in us. There's obviously nurturing in other animals. They nurture their loved ones, but their perception of life and death and all of it is very different than ours. So
Yeah.
it leads me to why? Why is our version of life so much more rich and complicated than any other being that exists? And why do we have this insatiable desire to learn and know more?
Yeah.
What is it?
Why does this, however many 3 pounds of gray matter in my brain, why is that able to plummet the intricacies of the universe?
Right.
Right. Like, and I think that's ultimately the questions that we should be asking in terms of, you matter more than you are matter. There's something going on.
There's something going on with all of us.
Yeah.
We kind of know it and we don't know it, but it's just, you can't measure it and you can't put it on a scale. And so people don't like that.
Yeah.
They don't like that. It makes them feel dumb to believe in that. It makes them feel dumb to even speculate, to even just say, what do you think happens when you die? Like, even that conversation is like, people don't like that. Nothing. It goes dark and that's it. It's over. That's it. You die. Like, how the fuck do you know? Have you died? Like, you don't know.
In all of this, what do you think of Jesus? Like, in terms of your own, journeying and trying to find answers to ultimate questions. What do you think of the historical person of Jesus?
Well, it certainly seems like there's a lot of people that believe that there was this very exceptional human being that existed. So the question is, what does that mean? Does it mean he was the Son of God? Does it mean he was just some completely unique human being that had this vision of humanity and this way of educating people and spreading this ideology that would ultimately change the way human beings interact with each other forever? So what is he the Son of God? Well, are we all? That's another question.
I think the gift of grace allows you, let me just put it in words, because we're not sons of God. We are creation of God. You become a kid, you become a children of God when you receive the gift of salvation. And that allows you to receive grace, which ultimately allows you to become a children of God. So don't get it twisted. We are God's creation. God put something in us, and that's actually how you know what's bad, what's good. We are made in the image of God. That's why you deserve respect. That's why I deserve respect, even though you committed something horrible, or you did something horrible, or you stole and everything. You deserve grace. You deserve mercy. And salvation is mercy. Grace is the ultimate gift that allows us to be called children of God.
Right? Or do we all have that inside of us? Do we all have that ability to change everything around us inside of us? Do we all have that unique connection to the divine? And is he a representation of the best version of that? Or was he an actual person that was the Son of God? And is it important?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, what does it mean? It's just the fact that it's a question to ponder is a miracle in itself, in a way. Just the fact that there's this concept of this person that died for our sins, as the Son of God. But you have to you have to believe in a bunch of stuff to go that way. Like, just the concept of that is interesting to people, because what it can do to people is offer them a very unique way to change the way they feel about the world itself. And if you do follow that, I know a lot of Christians are hardcore Christians. They're some of the nicest people you'll ever meet in your life. So it does work. You right? Like, if you do live like a Christian and you do follow the principles of Christ, you will have a richer, more love-filled life. So it is true, right? But you have to submit to this concept that this guy was the child of God who came down to earth, let himself be crucified, came back from the dead, explained a bunch of stuff for people, and then said, all right, see you when I come back.
And you don't know how you can wrap your head around that particular claim.
And if he came back, here's the thing. If he came back, who the fuck would believe him today? With all the fake news and all the CGI and AI, like, imagine. That would be the most bizarre thing of all time. If we get to a point where artificial reality is indiscernible from regular reality, and Jesus chooses to come back at that moment, boy, that's the ultimate test of faith. Right? When it's impossible to discern. If we really reach a point where virtual reality is indistinguishable from regular reality, which we're probably 100 years away from that or something. Like, how far? Maybe not even that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's probably why Jesus came in the first century and not the 21st century.
But imagine if that's the big catch. Like, Jesus does return, but when he returns, we're just...
That's an interesting question, because I always ask myself, why God sent Jesus to die for our sins? Literally 2,000 years ago. Why not now, when we have all this stuff? And I think it's the simplicity of the gospel is just showing us that you don't need, just like Joe actually said something, that in order for you to believe, you need to do all this stuff. Like, you don't need to do nothing. That's why Jesus came and did everything for us, so we can believe and so we can trust him. Faith is trust. Believe is the action of you allowing God to make a new, allowing the new covenant of God be in your life. But trusting God is the step of faith. Would you trust God with your life? Would you trust God with your finances? That's one of the things in this 2 years, the last 2 years, me and my wife were talking about this. I'm sorry I'm making this pause, but we were talking about how incredible it is that when I lost my job, we had some savings. We had money saved on the on bank account and stuff like that. But at the same time, how the hand of God, when me and my wife gave the step of faith in leaving our previous church and believing that God is going to work in this podcast, believing in God is going to work in, I'll be honest with you, probably you're going to call me whatever you want to call me. But there's been multiple times when I didn't have money to pay the water bill or the electricity, not the rent. We always had the rent, but and I was going to get jobs here and there, and God opened doors miraculously, and that's how I started getting my business in videography and stuff like that. But we've been receiving also check in the mailboxes, like anonymous. Explain that. We don't even actually tell everybody what's going on. We don't even tell anybody. It's like, oh, this is our situation.
So confused that we can't even tell.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's how he returns in the first place. Maybe he returns through AI.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the portal to Jesus.
I don't know anything about that.
He's just trolling Wes.
Yeah, I mean,
that scares the shit out of me.
I really appreciate, guys that you're friends with, right? Like the Jordan Petersons and the Douglas Murrays of the world, or, the Tom Hollands, not the Spider-Man actor, the historian, who talk about this stuff. I think I really like the way that Jordan Peterson articulates it, but I think he misses the forest for the trees.
How so?
In that he sees Jesus as an archetype. And I don't think actually even Jesus gives you the opportunity to see him as the archetype. Because I have this love-hate relationship with all of Peterson's stuff because he seems to get so much right where he walks up to the line, but he doesn't want to cross over.
And is the crossover, you think, connected to a life in academia? Or
No.
What do you think it is?
I wonder, and I'd love to talk to him about this, like how do you remedy this issue that, because he seems to think that the concept of Jesus as an example is more important than the actual flesh and blood first century itinerant Jewish preacher who was crucified and rose from the dead physically, which is the claim of the Gospels and the rest of the New Testament. That's an example for us to look on and live by. But I actually think that Jesus condemns moralism. And ultimately what I see Peterson doing is looking at Jesus as a moral example. Yeah. And if Jesus is nothing but a moral example, then you can save yourself and you don't actually need a savior. And so I think actually Jesus would have critiqued that because Jesus was very against moralism.
And how do you define Jesus being against moralism? Like, what do you mean by that exactly?
Well, Jesus looks at the religiosity of his day with like particular groups like the Pharisees and the Sadducees, who are these other groups of Jews during his day. So we talked about the Essenes, actually aren't mentioned in the Bible, but there are other groups like the Pharisees who are like lay scholars and the Sadducees who are professional priest scholars. And he's constantly critiquing the fact that they have this hypocritical religiosity to them where they're doing things like tithing their mint leaves, like to make sure that they get all of, this is where we get the idea of the letter of the law versus the intention of the law. Like Jesus critiques them for that because he says, you're trying to do everything right and you're missing the point. So one of the things he says is like, if your donkey falls in a ravine on the Sabbath, do you pull it out or does that work? Like, what's the point of the Sabbath? Is it to not do any work? Like, is it to make sure that you're not working too hard because you might be breaking the Sabbath? Or like, what is the point? He says, like, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. And that there's this intention. This is the whole Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 5, is he keeps saying, you have heard it said, but I say, and he refers to the Mosaic law. And it looks like he's critiquing the Mosaic law, but he's not actually. He's getting back to the intention of the law. So when he says, you have heard it said, do not commit murder. But I say to you, anybody who harbors a hate for their brother.
And I just want to make sure Jesus is not progressing right now in this part of the Bible. He's not progressing. He's not a progressive. What he's trying to do, again, just like Wes says, I'm just going to finish with this. In Matthew 9, Wes is actually right about the Sermon on the Mountain, but also he actually tells the Sadducees and the Pharisees right here in chapter 9, Matthew chapter 9, verse 13. This is the part of the Bible, the part of the chapter when Jesus calls Matthew. And let me just read that actually really quick. You guys want to go with me? Let's go. Just want to make sure you got this. Okay. Matthew 9, chapter 9, they're calling Matthew. As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. Follow me, he told him. And Matthew got up and followed him. While Jesus was having dinner with at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? And then Jesus got up and told them, Jesus said, it is not healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn, check this out, go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice, for I have not come to call the righteous, but the sinners. Where's my bow? I have this version right here in my Bible. It says, now go and learn the meaning of the scripture. In other words, Jesus is saying, you heard it was said, but I say this. It's not making sure you understand. Jesus is not progressive. Is trying to teach us the real meaning of the scriptures. Sometimes we get caught up with the good morals the teacher, the Jesus who actually taught. But he's going beyond that. He's going beyond to the point where yet this is the consequence. Good morals are going to become a consequence of you having a relationship with me, with Jesus, not with me. Because the meaning of the scripture can be interpreted only by having a relationship with God. Boom. All right. That's awesome. He's close. Joe Rogan is getting closer and closer Joe Rogan is getting closer to become a Christian. Agree to disagree. Agree to disagree. I see it this way. I see it this way. Pablo, who's God? I'm just going to finish with this. God, by definition, is the greatest conceivable being, which makes him worthy of praise. All right. We'll talk about this. Maybe I'm going to start doing lives. I have a lot of notes right here. And maybe we can actually start talking about this stuff. Let me know if you guys want me to do lives. I can do lives. I was going to do a live yesterday because of the podcast, Joe Rogan and Wes Huff. But a lot of things came out in the middle. So I hope you guys understand my heart. And see you next time. All right. Peace.